So if you were the anti-war person, you should have voted for Trump and the Republicans. That's what this means. If you're pro-war, you vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats.
I was trying to save abortion. That's why I voted for Biden.
Wow, that laugh at the end seemed genuine. That was Jimmy Dore endorsing Donald Trump as the anti-war option if he ends up running for re-election, I guess, which is fascinating because I remember the Trump presidency rather clearly. I remember his foreign policy rather clearly. And we'll get to Biden in just a minute, but before we do, let's just refresh Jimmy Dore's short memory span with who Donald Trump really was when it came to foreign policy during his first term in office.
The American military dropped the mother of all bombs, literally, that's its name. The bomb dropped today on an ISIS tunnel complex in Afghanistan is the most powerful non-nuclear explosion ever in warfare. After the bombing, President Trump suggested the weapon's use says a lot about his administration.
We have the greatest military in the world, and they've done a job as usual. So we have given them total authorization.
So if you were the anti-war person, you should have voted for Trump and the Republicans.
President Trump is giving the CIA significantly more authority in carrying out drone strikes.
The strike killing Soleimani was a major escalation in the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign on Iran. Up until now, that campaign largely relied on crippling economic sanctions. So how do we get from economic pressure to military might?
Donald Trump has wielded his power of veto, this time to block a resolution which aimed to end US military assistance to the Saudi coalition fighting Iran-backed rebels in Yemen.
So if you were the anti-war person, you should have voted for Trump and the Republicans.
The president pulls me aside on at least a couple occasions and suggests that maybe we have the US military shoot missiles into Mexico.
Shoot missiles into Mexico for what?
He would say to go after the cartels.
The anti-war president? By the way, that video that we put together also didn't include the fact that the Trump administration attempted coups in Venezuela on multiple occasions. Luckily, Trump and his administration was insanely incompetent and they failed in doing those coups. But that's who Donald Trump was. I remember very clearly how terrible he was in foreign policy. Just because he had rhetoric indicating that he wanted to pull troops or withdraw troops doesn't mean that he actually succeeded or really wanted those things. In fact, he has more negative marks on his foreign policy record than positive marks. And we'll get to Biden in a minute. But Cenk, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Trump is the peace president that we all need.
Yeah, remember when he said, we're not only gonna kill the terrorists, but we're gonna kill their families. And he, by the way, he followed through on that. A significant rise in civilian deaths under Donald Trump's bombings of foreign countries than even under Obama, and Obama was pretty terrible at it. So Trump came in and started killing civilians at a much higher rate, bombing all over the world. And Jimmy thinks that's the anti-war candidate?
In fact, the Trump administration stopped reporting on the number of civilian deaths that came as a result of the drone strikes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, tell me that you become a right winger and your entire audience is right wing and you get paid by the right wing without telling me that. So Trump is anti-war. Look, you want to criticize the Democratic Party, there's plenty to criticize. But you also should be, by the way, correct on all the facts. For example, as we transition to Biden, who did get us out of Afghanistan? Oh, right, Biden did.
Yeah. Well, okay, so what sparked that commentary, that expert commentary from the intelligent Jimmy Dore? The fact that Biden has decided to deploy hundreds of troops to Somalia, which I think that's a totally fine thing to criticize him on. I would criticize him on that. But to ignore Trump's foreign policy and make him out to be the peace president is unbelievably dishonest. But he is speaking to a right-wing audience, and so I'm not surprised by it at all. Now, just to give you some details on what's going down in Somalia, the US will reposition US forces in East Africa and move to restore the US military presence in Somalia in consultation with the Somali government. The official told reporters on Monday. The official also said under 5 500 troops will be sent back into the country, but declined to provide a precise number. He emphasized, however, that the Pentagon will not be restoring the full contingent of operators present in Somalia before the previous administration's withdrawal, which was about 750 military personnel. In early 2020, by the way, Trump did withdraw the 750 military personnel from Somalia. But again, you can't just cherry pick what you like to make your argument. You got to take a step back and look at the individual's foreign policy as a whole, and to cherry pick and point to Somalia as an example of Trump being a peace president is insane. By the way, going back to the reporting on what Biden is doing with Somalia, they give a little bit of background in regard to Trump. Trump's decision in December of 2020 to withdraw the US personnel from Somalia was part of a broader effort in the waning days of his administration to pull back US involvement in global conflicts, including Afghanistan and Iraq. But the Biden administration believes that al-Shabaab remains a notable priority given the threat it poses, and that a persistent US presence there will be necessary to counter the group. It's just more of this war on terrorism garbage. And the more the US military intervenes or gets involved in these conflicts, the more we hear about new insurgent groups, new terrorist groups. It's a never-ending cycle. So I don't believe the administration at all that they're like in there to root out terrorism. It never works. It's a waste of time.
Yeah. So we speak to a smart audience, so we tell you things that are easy to comprehend if you got a reasonable level of intelligence. So you say, for example, Obama did drone strikes that were reprehensible because it killed a lot of civilians. In fact, he did drone strikes against American citizens. They were extrajudicial killings. We lost a lot of members, paying members, when we said that. You know why we said it? Because it was true. And no one in the mainstream media was saying because they were protecting Obama. They love Obama because of how establishment he is. And we called out Eric Holder for saying, oh no, we don't need a judicial permission if we target an American abroad. That is an insane ideology, and that is terrible. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat doing it. Okay, so then Trump gets in office, and he's worse. He does more drone strikes, kills more civilians, acts more extrajudicially. And we gave you all those examples, but there's tons more. I mean, that example of killing Soleimani, that risked a massive war with Iran.
Yes.
And by the way, you wanna know why he did it? Because Sheldon Adelson was his top donor and gave him over $100 million. And he had a list of demands: move the capital of Israel. By the way, make sure that unions are not allowed to organize in his casinos, get rid of a corruption charge that he had for things he did in Macau. But one of the list of demands was start a war with Iran. And so Trump does his best by killing their top general to start and provoke a war. And then you go to Russia. They ask him now, how about Russia? He's like, oh, I wouldn't have done it under my watch because I would have been so tough on them. Jimmy, what does so tough on them mean? He would have done the same things that he's always talking about: bombings, the mother of all bombs, and we're so tough and we're gonna do military. Okay, maybe he wouldn't have done it to Russia, again, for the same economic interest that he didn't do anything about Saudi Arabia. He says, I like making money from Saudis. I like making money from Adelson and the Russians, etc. To call him anti-war, though, is preposterously fake and false. But that's what Jimmy does now. He's such a pathetic figure. But if you think, oh, but Cenk and Anna, maybe he's just an idiot and he got it all mixed up. And remember, he doesn't read anything.
I mean, look, he might be, because he avoided Trump stories like it was the plague during the Trump administration. All he did was focus on Democrats and criticizing them.
It's not an accident. He's sitting there trying to help the Republican Party in every single way while pretending to be a progressive. It's the oldest grift. Dave Rubin did this so long ago, Jimmy. You're a retread. Two unfunny so-called comedians who always have the same one trick pony. That's all they are. So I want to go to the last clip here. This is where he talks about Ron DeSantis. Just so you think, oh, he didn't just make an honest mistake about Trump because he loves Trump so much and he thinks he's so anti-war. Now watch him fillate Ron DeSantis.
And so now look, and now they give a right winger like DeSantis, who should be repulsive to people who are on the left. Now they make him attractive. And how are they doing it? Watch, here's what he says.
But clearly, our entire principles that the country was founded on, you cannot have a ministry of truth in this country. And so let's get real here. Let's make sure that we're doing things to benefit Floridians and Americans, but we're not going to let Biden get away with this one. So we'll be fighting back.
If you're for free speech and civil rights and liberties, who are you going to vote for? This guy or Joe Biden? Tough call though, isn't it?
So what he's referring to there, Ron DeSantis was in that press conference being critical of Joe Biden and the DHS rolling out a disinformation department, essentially, which we were critical of as well on this show. We think it's a bad idea. But if you think Ron DeSantis is a free speech politician, you would be mistaken. In fact, one of the latest moves that Ron DeSantis made was to ban demonstrators from being able to demonstrate in residential areas, to basically prevent protesters from protesting in front of the homes of various people in positions of power, like politicians and judges and things like that.
Yeah.
Real free speech.
Okay. He said they make Ron DeSantis look attractive. No, Jimmy, it's not they. It's you who's trying to make Ron DeSantis look attractive. Mm-hmm. If you leave out the part where he's now talking about banning protesters on public sidewalks, and you leave out the part where he's in favor of a law in Florida that says you're not allowed to criticize Israel, otherwise you lose government contracts, and you paint him as a freedom of speech hero when he's the exact opposite, you are trying to make him look attractive. And there's a reason why you're doing that, because now your main job is to fillet Republicans all day long. I hope you're having fun. Guys, there's nothing wrong with criticizing Biden or Obama or the Democrats. We do it all day long. But when you hide the problems of the Republican Party and you falsely try to make them look great like heroes, like anti-war heroes and freedom of speech heroes, when you know for a fact that that's not true. That's lying to your audience on purpose for money like a whore.
In fact, one final thing I'll say about this. Jimmy Dore argued that Biden is worse than Trump because Biden's administration has a DHS that includes something now known as a disinformation board. Again, we're critical of that as well. But then he said that Biden is worse because of that reason and compared Biden to Trump declaring or wanting to declare martial law to squash protesters in front of the White House. He thought that doing that, declaring martial law, would have been far less, it would be better than what Biden is doing now with the disinformation.
Martial law brings imperialism to America.
Yeah, no.
Military rule.
He loves
Look,
it.
I'd call him an idiot, except he's not. He's lying on purpose every single day. He just told you to vote for Trump. Trump said, I don't care who won the goddamn election. He's basically declared that he hates democracy and that he would have put himself in charge even though he knows for a fact he lost the election. And he was considering doing military rule in America. And Jimmy says, oh, vote for him. He's the one who is in favor of democracy. He's the anti-war, he's the one on the left. Look, I don't know who I feel more sorry for. The fact that he's reduced himself to this pathetic creature who makes money off this grift, or his audience who believes obvious lies. For God's sake, look up a fact, okay? Look up any facts. He's obviously lying to you. For the 8 people who think they're on the left that are still there, 98% of his audience is right wing and they love it. They're like, oh, left winger Jimmy Dore, left winger Glenn Greenwald, left winger Dave Rubin. They all agree with us. And there's like 8 schmucks left, like, oh, the left is for Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. If you say so, you guys are.